hope my voice holds out. I'm on my third round of different antibiotics, so hopefully that's going to all work out. But it is great to be with you, and before I get into my comments on the presidential race today, I think before I put that hat on, I don't want to confuse anybody, Senator Cruz has nothing to do with the mess going on in Smith County in the Commissioner's Court, and I want to make sure we don't conflate that today. So I'm going to talk about the problems with Commissioner's Court and what we intend to do about it. I just got off the phone with some investigators, so I will tell you first that the Texas Attorney General's investigation into the county judge and commissioners over the traffic camera contract is ongoing. I asked them, do you have everything you need? They said yes. And that's, that's the extent of what I get to know about that. Same thing with the FBI. I called them to talk about the fact that we plan to file as soon as the final draft is ready. In a district court in Smith County, we're going to file something that's called Petition for Removal and Trial. For those of you who know your way around the local government code, those are the state statutes that are the parameters for county government. You will find that in Chapter 87 of the state government code. If you want that link, I can send it to you, although I think we probably have it posted on our website. What that means is that we will file a petition with a district court for the removal of Joel Baker. And let me go into the reasons why. I've had some people say, don't you all care about his family? I care. The board cares, and I know many of you, and probably all of you, care about Joel's family, his wife and his children, and his widowed mother. We absolutely do. But Joel Baker is a grown man. He is an adult. He has been elected. This is his third term. He took an oath of office. He was vice chair of the State Commission on Judicial Ethics and Conduct. Okay? So now, that means there's some responsibility there. And as I told the media when they asked me the question, well, what do you say to things that Joel and some other people say that you all just have a vendetta against Joel Baker? We didn't create the mess, but we're going to try to clean it up. There's only one way to do that. You can either wait until 2018 when there's another primary, or you can avail yourselves of the only avenue we have, and that is the court system. In the state of Texas, counties do not have the legal authority, citizens don't have legal authority, as they do in some states, for a recall election. We don't have that. Some municipalities in the state of Texas, depending on their charter, have recall. That's for cities, certain cities. We don't have that in county government, and we don't have it for state officials. Golly gee, there have been some times I wish we had that. We could clean up some messes before they got worse. But we don't have that. So the only thing we have is this part of Chapter 87 of the Local Government Code that says that any citizen of Smith County who's lived here for at least 6 months and is not currently under indictment can file a petition in district court to have, and there's a list of different officials that you can remove. So what does that mean? Is it a simple process? No, it's not. Could it be a costly process? Yes, it can, because you have to go to trial to support the removal. Okay? So what that means is on your table, you can see a green piece of paper there. And it's probably, if it's the version that I did, it looks like it. I'm telling you that we need to raise some money. First, to file the petition to get the attorney. And by the way, yes, I have sense enough to know that I didn't get an attorney from Smith County. Yeah, lived here long enough to understand why you don't do that. So, yes, we've hired an attorney in Austin. I know him very well. Conservative guy. Integrity law firm. A fighter. So, yeah. So, we're going to have to raise the money because did we have this in our budget? No. No, we didn't. But the board of directors decided that this was something we needed to do. Because I have to tell you, an elected official who already knows they're under investigation and then will participate, will conduct himself in the way that evidence seems to prove that he did with sexting while he was on the bench in Austin, rendering judgment on other judges. That's a problem. That's a really big problem. And I have to tell you that I don't think this community should tolerate it. Because what you tolerate, you get more of. And I don't believe that Smith County should tolerate this in any elected official. I will tell you, if a county employee had been caught sending over 1,000 such messages, pictures, and videos to someone, I would hope that that county employee would have been fired on the spot. But see, it's not that easy to fire an elected official. So, what happens? The petition gets filed in district court. That means we have subpoena power. That means people will be subpoenaed. I would anticipate that Joel P. Baker would be subpoenaed, that the private investigator, the forensic specialist, the woman, her ex-husband, who has expressed in a public forum that he has direct knowledge, and any and everybody, this will go into open court. Now, would I choose to do that? No. I didn't start it. Joel did. So, by his conduct. So, as I said, anybody who knows that they're already under investigation that would go ahead and do this, I have no reason to believe that he would not do more. Okay? So, let me tell you, and I haven't made this public, but I have exhausted now every opportunity to get people who are friends of his, who were friends of his late father, to contact him, to go to him and say, if you don't want all of this made public in a courtroom, if you don't want this to happen to your wife, your children, and your mother, please go ahead and resign. Because that is the last exit off of this highway, folks, is if he resigns. Now, as I said, I have my heart breaks for his family. But that doesn't mean that we should tolerate his behavior. So I know to some, because I see some sad faces out there, that's a hard saying. But we are not a garden club. We're not a quilting club. We're not a hunting and fishing club, although I wish I were fishing today after I got done talking to y'all. But we are a watchdog organization, and our bylaws and our mission says that we are to hold elected officials accountable. So it's just that simple. Now, does anybody right now have a short question on this topic before we go into the... Yes, sir.
Have y'all looked around? If we don't do this, there's nobody else?
No, any individual County that it has been a citizen of Smith County for 6 months and is not under current indictment has legal standing to file such a petition in court. Anybody does. But as usual, if we don't, who will?
That's what.
So now here's what we're not going to do. Because I had originally said that we would allow other people to add their names over and above the board. There's about 4 or 5 people who call me and said they would like to be added as, on the petition. Here's why we're not going to open this up to anybody and everybody. Because it's just going to cost more money. Because here's what has to happen. You have to be vetted. Our attorney has to vet you because they have to make sure that anybody is listed on the petition is a resident of Smith County and is not under indictment. You get me? So I'm not wanting to just run up, the price tag here because we frankly have other things to do and it's hard enough to raise money as it is. Okay? So, yes, Rosalie. Well, you would have to give all of your information to Mr. Jim Snow back there because we have to account for everything to the Ethics Commission. So there are certain things that Jim Snow needs to know. Gil?
Does Joel Baker get the use of the county attorney for his defense?
I suspect so. Anybody else? Real quick. And I will talk to anybody afterwards about this for a little while. Yes, Bob?
Why does Smith County need a committee to decide the limits of free speech in Commissioners Court?
Okay, Bob. So to hit a couple of things that happened this week. There is no reason that the Smith County Commissioners Court has to put together a blue ribbon committee to decide what should or should not be said in the courtroom in public participation. There is no reason for it. That is what we elect them to do. And I will say this, that if you cannot figure out how to do public participation, there are 250 other 3 counties in the state of Texas that have procedures in Commissioner's Court. I don't know why this is so hard, because I will tell you this, that public participation up until this current court, whether you're talking about the late Larry Craig's court, or you're talking about Becky Dempsey's court, it was not restrictive to this degree. Okay? Elected officials need to get this. And anybody that's running for office here that's never done this before, you need to understand that if you run for public office, part of your job is to hear stuff you don't want to hear. If you're running because you think everybody's going to love you every day and nobody's going to ask you a tough question, really? You need to find another line of work already. That's not the way it works. I'm not an elected official, but I get to hear a whole lot of stuff I don't want to hear, and golly, I don't get paid to hear it. So, let's get real here. So anyway, Bob, to answer your question, let me just go ahead and say it was a stupid thing to do. So while we're talking about stupid, to refurbish the Carlton Hotel, to move the district courts and the district attorney. Hi, John Cole. God love you. I'm so glad to see you. John knows what I'm talking about. He's lived here and he's been through all this with us before, and so is Sharon Emmer. It is stupid to take the district courts and the district attorney out of the courthouse and move them down the street to the Carlton Hotel, which the price tag they estimate would be somewhere in between $24 million and $46 million. And I have to tell you, they could not build a chicken coop in this county, much less that. There's no integrity there. See, I told y'all you better buckle in today. And besides that, when are we going to get around to fixing county roads? I'd like to know, when is that going to happen? So, they need to stop already with hiring the consultants to do the studies on what we're going to do to build some more buildings. As a blogger said, to build the Smith County Kremlin. So I'm just saying, you know, Bob, thank you for asking me that question, but those were at least two incredibly stupid moves this week. And yes, I said it. And no, I'm not sorry. I said it. So now, are we done with that for right now? Ann.
Have you had any feedback from any of the other commissioners? Because personally, I would like to know how my commissioner is, Terry Phillips, is what he's standing for, or just, we work to get some of these people elected.
Yes, ma'am. So on the issue of asking the judge to resign, I will say this, that Carrie Nix, Commissioner Nix, and Commissioner Phillips both made statements in court about this, that they had heard from their constituents and they believed that Judge Baker had lost his authority to lead. So there was no formal motion made for a vote of no confidence or anything like that. The other two didn't say anything. So, you know, we were trying to let that play out. So I will say this, Commissioner Nix and Commissioner Phillips should be commended for having the backbone to stand up and say, okay, so now, Bob, if you've got the PowerPoint ready to go, let's talk about something. And as to the timeline, no. Presidential, it's not this one. It's the one that's got the presidential seal on the very top. Would somebody look at that with Bob? It's got the presidential election. Yeah, it's got a presidential seal on the first slide. That's it. So I'll let you get that up, and I will talk to you about the timeline to file the petition. We have finished the first draft. There are some tweaks that needed to be done, and so I anticipate as soon as our attorney is done with that, then we will be ready to file. So I will try to make sure that I let you all know. Okay, so now I'm no longer talking about county government. Now we're switching to presidential election process. And I know that this is terribly complicated to a lot of folks that don't think about it in terms of all the granular details that have to do with the nomination process. To some of you, this will be, some of it, you're going, okay, Joanne, I already know this. But based on the types of questions I've gotten, I decided to go down this route. So just bear with me. So Bob, would you advance to the first slide, please? Keep going. We know who those people are. By now, we really know who these people are. So, and just keep on going. So in the presidential selection process, we have caucuses and primaries. And as most of you know, the primary election is where the Republican and the Democratic parties in each state begin the process of choosing their party's nominee for the general election. Now, every state is different. And I'm going to try and press that upon you as we go through this, because some of the pundits on TV act as if every state's the same. And so anyway, I have stopped listening to most of it because it makes me nuts. And I have pretty much divorced Fox News for obvious reasons. So, caucuses are voting that is conducted at local party meetings. And Bob, just keep clicking until the whole thing fills up. This is where, for example, I was a crew surrogate in Iowa. So what I did in Iowa is I was told to go to this church where we anticipated having about 250 people. We ended up having 365 people all crammed in this room. And so what happens is at the caucus, and I will segue into the whole Ben Carson thing in just a second on this, so don't let me forget that. So in Iowa, the way they run the caucuses, and it is by the book. Those are very orderly people. They're not random. They know what they're doing. And so your caucus officials tell you when you show up there, and by that way, you have to be there early, you have to sign in, you have to identify which candidate you're speaking for. And each candidate has one surrogate who can speak for them. You have 3 minutes. I had 3 minutes to convince a room full of 365 people that I had never seen before in my entire life why Ted Cruz should get their vote. Now, if you don't think that's some pressure, it's just a little bit of pressure. And so I'm not one to write a bunch of notes and read. So I just told them, I'm not here to talk to you about tax policy. I'm not here to talk to you about what's going on with ISIS. I'm going to talk to you about the man that I know, that I worked hard to get elected as the United States Senator, and why I believe that he should be our nominee and he should be the President of the United States. And so I got out and did my deal, and then I sat down. So now by the time the caucus started promptly at 7 o'clock, until the time we were all through, we were all done speaking. Every candidate had a surrogate there. Most of them did. And Jeb Bush didn't. I think Jeb is the only one who didn't have someone speaking for him. And then some of the lower, like the Gilmore guy, people like that. Kasich didn't have anybody either. So anyway, by the time we got to 7:30, we were already back at our table where we were assigned, sitting there being quiet. Because once in Iowa, I don't know how it is in sloppy caucuses in other states, but in Iowa, once you say your 3 minutes, then you go sit down and you don't get to say anything else. You don't get up, you don't start debating and all that. So I will tell you from my perspective on the whole Ben Carson thing and whether or not there was some dirty trick, that originated with a tweet. Representative King, who was a surrogate, a Cruz surrogate, picked up from CNN what CNN was reporting. He tweeted it out. Well, people who follow, and trust me, only people who follow Congressman King would have gotten that. And then some lower level people from Camp Cruz forwarded that out to other people. But I can tell you by the time I saw that on my phone, which, you're sitting there in a caucus and you're not sitting there looking at a phone. The message that came in on my phone didn't tell me to do anything. It just said there's a possibility that Carson is going to drop out after tonight because he's going back to Florida. And so I will tell you that by the time that came in on my phone, we were done in our caucus. There wasn't time to get up. And would you spend your 3 minutes talking about why a candidate is dropping out? So anyway, that was from my experience being there, I think that it was portrayed as something that it was not. Because from my perspective, even if somebody was going to be dumb enough to stand up at a caucus and talk about another candidate instead of your candidate in 3 minutes, it would have gotten there too late. So, like I said, all those caucuses, if you'll hold your question until the end, I'm going to grab them all at the end. So that is an example of a caucus in Iowa. Different states run their caucuses very differently. They may be open or closed by party affiliation, and that is determined by state law in every individual state. Some states have their Democratic and Republican caucuses on the same day. Some of them do not. Caucus states are Alaska, Colorado, Hawaii, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, Minnesota, Nevada. We were taught to say Nevada, sorry. North Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming. Now note there that the GOP canceled the caucus this year for Colorado. Those delegates are unbound until the national convention. So who are going to be some really popular people? Right. North Dakota is also unbound. Now, to explain the territories, because I've had a number of people say to me, Joanne, what in the world are people who live in territories doing, voting? Well, American Samoa, Guam, Northern Marianas, and the Virgin Islands only vote in a primary. They cannot vote in a general election. Okay, so I'll get that. And most of those are unbound too, until the national election. Just keep clicking, Bob. So in primaries, we know more about primaries because that's what we do in Texas. The voters go to the polls, and it's a secret ballot, and they vote who they want in the general for the general election. So the primary season is from January to June, and so who decides how those delegates shake out. Are they winner take all, winner take most? Are they provisional? What is that, okay? So state party organizations, for the most part, decide those rules for the primaries in a particular state. So as we said before, the primaries can be open or closed. It depends on the state. Some states allow people to register to vote the day of, or to change your party affiliation the day of. So I will tell you from my perspective, the upcoming primaries are very important for us because they are closed primaries, okay? I think we will do very well in those closed primaries. Next. Now, I know you can't read a lot of this, and I will tell you that, the different, whether you go to Real Clear Politics, Politico, Reuters, and different websites, this varies. But based on what I was able to put together, we have 17 remaining GOP primaries. And I will get Becky to post this so y'all can look at it as this comes up so that you can see if they're winner take most, winner take all, etc. And look, for example, on West Virginia, there on May 10th, they actually have 3 different types of delegates. And so the only ones who are specifically bound are the 3 that they call the RNC delegates. The others may specify their intention, or they may not, and just decide that they're going to wait to say who they're going to support when they get to the national convention. So that makes it very interesting. But you will see there are about 811 delegates left to go. Next slide. The delegate count before Wisconsin. The total GOP delegates needed to win the total number of delegates available is 2,472. Needed for a nomination is 1,237. Currently, Trump has 736, Cruz 463, and you see down the list there. Now, just this week, and things change for a whole lot of reasons that I don't have time to get into, but Marco Rubio said that he's going to hold his delegates until the convention. He's not going to say, I'm endorsing X, Y, and Z, and the delegates are going to go there, okay? So, and then you can see how those are supposed to be the bound delegates there. Next. And for all the people who keep going on and on and on and on and on about how many, if somebody has won the popular vote and somebody hasn't, and somebody's got more states than the other, none of that matters one bit in this stage of the process. The only thing that matters is the delegate count. Now, the only reason that the number of states you've won by the time you get to a national convention matters is because of Rule 40. You have to have won the majority of delegates in 8 states. Okay? That's why the number of states matter. And I can tell you that the two top vote getters both have the number of states needed to clear that threshold. Next. So, this is granular. I apologize. We'll try to get through this because it can be confusing. If one candidate arrives at the Cleveland Convention with a majority of 1,237 of all the delegates, then that candidate, that's it. And it doesn't matter what the other people are there for. They, because of Rule 40, may not get to even cast their votes for their candidate. Okay? So the candidate that already has a majority and has the 8-state threshold, that's it. So next slide. But what if no candidate receives 1,237 delegate votes on the first ballot for the GOP nomination? First of all, a sizable number of delegate votes won't be counted in the final tally of the first ballot because they are for candidates who didn't make the 8-state threshold. You get that? Okay? Second, according to the national rules. Now, the rules can be changed, and I can tell you that there was a time in the first quarter of this year, and I'm thinking that it was in January, there was a meeting of the committee. They could have at that time adjusted the rules. And Morton Blackwell tried to do that. And if y'all know who Morton Blackwell is, been around for a long time, and is a man who knows everything about rules, and he wanted to change the rules so at least the people that are there representing candidates or have delegate counts for candidates who didn't meet the 8-state threshold, they would at least be able to go through the process of symbolically casting their votes for the candidates so that those votes would be recognized at the convention. He thought he had that amendment passed. Some GOP attorney came blowing into the room just before they were going to vote, and he whispered to somebody, and then they withdrew that, and it all went back as the same as it's been. I mean, nothing got changed. So by saying all of that, there was a time that you could have made the rule change that it would not have looked as if you were trying to rig the convention. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if you do it now, or you wait until the convention and you start messing around with the rules, guess what? Everybody's going to cry foul, right? Yeah. Okay. So, as I always say about most things, there's a right time and a right way to do the right thing. And then there's a really stupid way in a stupid time, to do something. And I think blowing the convention up would not be a smart thing to do, figuratively or really speaking so. So, number 3. All of delegate votes from states that hold primaries will be allocated by those state primaries to specific candidates on the first ballot. That doesn't mean that on the subsequent ballot votes that all the delegates are free to vote for whomever they choose. And here's why. What's standing in the way? That 8-state threshold. So that is the problem there. Only candidates who meet the 8-state threshold required to receive votes that count on the first ballot can receive votes that count on subsequent ballots. Okay, next. So, under the current rules, therefore, it's nonsense to talk about any candidate coming from behind to win the nomination unless that candidate meets the 8-state threshold. Hello, John Casey. And it's also makes no sense to talk about breaking a possible convention deadlock by nominating someone who wasn't on a candidate in the running for nomination anyway. You want to talk about something that burned the party to the ground, and they're already doing a pretty fine job of it, would be doing something stupid like that. Next. So, the definition of a contested convention is, if no candidate has reached the 1237, the delegates will first vote according to their state party rules, and the 8-state rule comes into play here. Then they will vote on who they think best represents the GOP until a single candidate receives the necessary votes. But again, who's eligible to get the necessary votes? The 2 candidates, or at least at this point, there are only 2 candidates who have met the 8-state threshold. Okay? Next. Since the founding of both political parties, and the reason I put this slide in here, and I've got some notes here that we can go over some particulars, but there are people that are talking heads on, CNN, it doesn't matter, on all of them, that act as if this is the first time there could be a possibility of there ever being a contested convention, and that's not true. I mean, history, we have a pretty rich history of having some contested conventions. Dwight Eisenhower, Abraham Lincoln, for example. So since the founding of both political parties, 1832 for the Democrat Party and 1856 for the Republican Party, a total of 90 nominating conventions have been held. And of the 90 conventions, 26 or nearly 30% have been contested conventions. The Democrats have had 16 contested conventions out of 48, and the GOP has had 10 out of 42. So that's my little note here to tell you about historical perspective. The Democrats have had several raucous conventions, including the 1924 contest, which required a record 103 ballots, 103, to nominate John Davis. Franklin Delano Roosevelt needed 4 ballots to win the 1932 nomination. In the GOP, let's see. The first was in 1860 when neither Abraham Lincoln nor William Seward entered the convention with a majority of the delegates. It took Lincoln 3 ballots to secure the nomination. Then we had James Garfield won the nomination, the Republican nomination, in 1880 after 36 ballots. His vanquished rivals included former President Ulysses S. Grant. Dwight Eisenhower entered the 1952 convention having won just 26.3% of the delegates in the primaries. But he still went on to win the nomination over Ohio Senator Robert Taft in the last true brokered convention for either party. So the last time we've had a brokered convention was in 1952. The last contested convention was in 1976 when Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan both came close but failed to win enough delegates to clinch the nomination outright. So Ford went on to win on the first ballot. So this has happened before. It's not something new. Next. So the GOP nominating convention is July 18th through the 21st in Cleveland. And at that convention, the party adopts a platform to unify support behind common goals. Theoretically so. Rules are adopted and delegates to the convention to elect the party's nominees for president and vice president. They get to vote. All right. So I think that's my last slide. So now, let's talk just a minute about some of the things that have been in the news lately. The blow up over Senator Cruz saying that Muslim neighborhoods should be patrolled. Okay, again, that's not anything new. Community policing. Law enforcement people know about community policing. Community policing has been used in the United States for a long time. And what does that mean? In simple terms, it means high-risk areas. High-risk areas. It's about getting to know the people in the community. And frankly, when you look back at some of the most successful times this has been used since 9/11, the people in the Muslim neighborhoods wanted law enforcement to be there. To pretend that there's no possibility of any Muslims being radical Islamists in the United States of America, to pretend that doesn't exist is just worse than stupid. It's dangerous. Okay? So, I will tell you that kind of focused attention in where you have the highest risk is something that's very smart and important. It's better than saying, well, I'm going to consult myself. To be able to talk to law enforcement and to people who are in the intelligence agencies and to be able to talk to them and talk through this, and I have to say, Ted has some of the smartest, the strongest conservatives that are on his team to help him with issues like this. And so, and some of them are on the surrogate calls that we have every day. And in fact, just take a little sidebar here. I love David Limbaugh. Do y'all like David Limbaugh? I'm so mad at his brother these days. But David is so funny, and he's on the surrogate calls with us. And the David Limbaugh that you see on TV is, I mean, you know, David's one of those people that's like he's always on. I mean, he's just like got a full force speed or he would be off. Well, Dave is full force. And so he's listening along with the rest of us on the circuit call. And if any of the campaign staff say something that he doesn't understand, he goes, wait just a minute, I have a question. This is David Limbaugh, I have a question. And he asks some of the best questions, and he holds the staff accountable. And so I really like David Limbaugh. I enjoy him a lot. Ken Cuccinelli is somebody else that's on the call with us. Louis Gohmert Louis is a surrogate, and he has either he's on the call or he has a staffer on the call with us every day. And so what we do is we hear updates on polling. We hear updates on where, the controversies of the day. So I will tell you this whole thing about Ted Cruz maybe having 5 mistresses, which if you all know Ted, I won't, because this is probably it's being recorded, I won't say some of the things that I normally would say to some of my friends about it. But it's hilarious because, on the one hand, the media and people try to tell you that Ted Cruz is one of these people, he's a guy that nobody likes. Nobody likes it. We're surprised that Heidi does. Or that his 2 little girls do. So he's either that, or he's this hot-blooded Cuban that's grabbing every woman he can and getting her in a closet. I have to tell you that if any of that crazy stuff had gone on during the Senate race, we would have known it, and he would not be senator from Texas. But they have been shopping this story around a lot. I mean, this has been going on since before Christmas. We knew they were shopping the story around. And so Jason Johnson is kind of like the head strategist for the campaign. And so I get a text from Jason, and he said, brace yourself, here comes, a salvo. And he tells me about it, and I said, well, that's ridiculous. And he said, yeah. He said, but I did my due diligence. I went to the boss, and I said, boss, is any of this true? And Ted said, absolutely not. That's not me. That's not what I did. When frankly, like I said, to know Ted, that's not it. Because in those situations, you would not be debating the Constitution, right? So anyway, it's absolutely not true. And so let's talk about the National Enquirer story, because the first story that was being shopped around was that it was an affair between he and Katrina Pearson. And now I can tell you for sure that's not true. So now there's been some folks have said, some of the pundits have said, well, it could not possibly be a story that was constructed by the Trump campaign because a chief spokesperson is named in the story. People. Folks that sit around tables constructing political sabotage, they'll throw one of their own in there if they have to win. They absolutely will. But the National Enquirer story, what you need to know about that is that the CEO, David Pecker, is a good friend of Donald Trump's. For the first time in the sordid, tawdry, tabloid history of National Enquirer. And by the way, folks, these are the same people that say, I don't know, a space alien married, a chimpanzee, and we got some strange being walking around. I mean, really? So, National Enquirer, for the first time in its history, has endorsed Donald Trump for president. Then, Mr. Stone, who's the only source named in the story, Roger Stone is a big buddy of Donald Trump's, and he was like fired from the campaign. Okay, that's called plausible deniability. Okay, so I can just tell you this has been shopped around a while. Now they're trying to blame the Rubio people and all this back and forth. The only thing you need to know about this is it's not true, and we're wasting time talking about jobs, freedom, and security. Instead of us talking about that, we're talking about this junk. Now, let me say this. I was doing a radio show this week, and the first question I got was, well, what do you think about this, this high school argument going on between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump over their wives? Because after all, Ted Cruz's super PACs, one of his super PACs started it. Okay, the Make America Awesome PAC is not a Cruz PAC, super PAC. And besides that, do you know how much they, just to get this into some kind of perspective, do you know how much they spent on those social media ads? It was 3 figures. Under $1,000. So haven't we made a big to-do over this PAC putting social media ads on in Utah? So this comes under the heading of, gee, I think you're protesting too much. Because what it did is it gave an opportunity to strike out at Heidi, which was planned. And I think that is the lowest. There's no low that they won't go to. Because I have to tell you, to put together side by side a picture of 2 women and to demean both of them to the degree that you're going to make comments on their looks, is that what this country is about, really? I mean, I know that's been done in history. There's some interesting stories in the historical past about who called whose wife fat during the 1800s and who accused the wife of being a drunkard and blah, 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 and all that. So this is not, there's nothing new under the sun. We know that from Scripture. But, I mean, aren't we silly when our world is in the trouble it's in and we're having a conversation about semi-nude photos, etc. And by the way, if somebody wanted to do more, they could with that. All right, let's see what else I said I'd talk to you about today. We talked about the Carson and the Cruz kerfluffle that we keep hearing. Because you see, there's this old saying that if you repeat the same phrase over and over and over and over again enough, people will believe it, right? Well, I can tell you that we have some numbers, and they just came out yesterday, so I didn't have time to put them into the mix here today. But we have the favorability ratings that we've recently gotten, and I can tell you that you may believe that the lying Ted thing is having an impact on Ted's favorability ratings, but they are not. His favorability ratings are higher now than they've ever been, and somebody else's is pretty low. And so here, to be honest about it, if you have such high unfavorability ratings at this point in a presidential primary, and you have not broken 50% in any election, and the polls show, and I don't care what poll it is, when likely GOP voters talk about whether or not they will turn out to vote, when 70% of them say they're not interested in voting for you, I don't know that you have a hope of beating Hillary lying Clinton. Okay? So, I know I probably offended some people that are in the room that are Trump supporters. Sorry. Not sorry what I said. If you want to debate the issues, we can do that sometime. Ask Ashton, put you on a thing, and we'll have a debate here. Cruz versus Trump supporters. What's that? And, but anyway, those of you who care very deeply about principle, because I'm going to tell you at the end of the day, if you win and you have lost every single principle you have, and your movement no longer stands for constitutional limited government, the rule of law, national sovereignty, life, liberty, if you no longer stand for that and you voted for a big government progressive, that's probably going to disappoint the heck out of you 15 minutes after they're in office, if not before. What have you got if you sell out all your principles? We have to be a people about principle. Because you know what? I really believe that principle wins. I believe that principle can win in this country. So I would ask of all of you that are in the household of faith that you would pray as you have never prayed before. Because I will tell you this, if the bad thing happens here, we know for sure we're under severe judgment. Okay? So, and we know how to deal with that too, by just keeping our eyes on the Lord. So, what kind of questions do we have?
All right. Get these so everyone can hear. First of all, thank you for being here and for updating us.
You got it? Jack, thank you. First question, please address the issue of natural-born citizen since Ted was born in Canada. Haven't heard this in a while, and will this keep coming up?
Well, I think it was just yesterday. Where's Samantha? Samantha, did you see the email I sent you? Wasn't it Pennsylvania? A Pennsylvania court just ruled, another court just ruled that Ted Cruz is eligible to run for president. So here's the thing, and I don't want to get into the weeds because I know there are some people that want to go back to Blackstone's and Old English law and all that. That's way above my pay grade. Let me tell you how I say it. Just like children of missionaries, children of our military, when parents go overseas, out of this country, outside the boundaries of the United States and not one of its territories, and a child is born to at least one American parent, one citizen, American citizen parent, that child is an American citizen. Therefore, that child is eligible to run for president of the United States. Okay? So now, there's a whole, I've got all kinds of links of people that are way smarter than I am that describe that to you in minute detail. So if anybody wants those links, write on one of the cards or on the back of one of the green sheets of paper and make sure it gets in my hand before I leave from here today, and I'll try to get you those links over the weekend. Next.
All right, I have a lot. It's a treat to get to see you. So can you speak to the Wall Street predictors who have said Cruz could not beat Hillary?
Well, I can tell you that in a variety of polls, I think Marquette has won the Pew poll recently, and I'll try to do a better job. But would you all like for me to put an email blast out when we get new polls? Would you like for me to do that? Okay, I'll try to do that. And some of the internal polls I can't give out. But let me just tell you one cool thing about our pollster, Chris Wilson. He's one of those really brainy, smart people. He has developed an algorithm that he puts every one of the polls through his algorithm to remove the bias, the pollster's bias. He's studied this forever, and he knows how to do that. And I can tell you, with the exception of South Carolina, which I think was a sandbagged thing, he's been on the mark with the outcomes. So I think our internal polls are good. So I will tell you right now that on just the Wisconsin, in every poll I've seen that has been accurate, Cruz is 10 points ahead of Trump in Wisconsin. And in the matchup with Hillary, I think the latest one I saw is coming from memory. I think she beats Trump by 7, and it shows she would beat Ted by 3. So I will tell you, these things are fluid, and I will tell you right now, our pollster told us yesterday, we're not even talking about New York polls right now, because what happens is, once Wisconsin is in the rearview mirror, whatever happens in Wisconsin always has an impact on the next state. I will tell you that the Cruz fundraising is strong, and I will tell you that he continues, we continue to pick up people who were supporters of other candidates and some really strong new surrogates. So, y'all just keep praying and keep watching, and I'll try to do a better job of sending out some polls every now and then so that y'all will see it, and we'll do it in 2 ways. Send out an email blast. It's got some links to some polls and just a little summary of what we think they mean. And then we will do for you Facebook, and everybody that's a Facebook person in the room, Facebook user, please go to our Facebook page and do all that thing that you do to help us get the word out about that, because we've really tried to make a good effort, and we've had a significant number of people, that likes our page. So anyway, it is within the margin of error, though, on those polls with Cruz being able to defeat Hillary. I would love to see that debate. Next.
So in other words, like and share it on Facebook.
Yes.
If a candidate drops out of the race, can his delegates not go to any other candidate that they choose?
They can, as long as if Rule 40 stays in place. First of all, Rule 40 means that you have to have a majority of delegates in 8 states. Okay. So, as long as you're voting for a candidate that has met that criteria, if Rule 40 is still in place, by the time we go to Cleveland, the delegates can vote for a different candidate than what, for example, if it's a Rubio delegate, yes, they may vote for another one, as long as they're voting for a candidate that has met the Rule 40 threshold of 8 states. Okay, that's the thing that's driving all the conversation now. Next.
You didn't say how much money you needed for the petition.
Oh, I thought I did. At least we need $1,000 for just the initial drafting of the petition and filing it. $1,000. We go to trial. Gee whiz, who knows?
All right, I have a duplicate on these. This one. Why doesn't Ted defend himself about the lying Ted phrase? Some people do believe it and change their votes because of it.
Well, some people believe it, but I can tell you that it is really important for a candidate not to kick every barking dog, because you soon sink into the schoolyard sandbox. And if every time somebody calls you, my tweet's out, well, I'm Ted. If he sends out a tweet that says, no, I'm not, I mean, I don't want him to do that. I want him to talk about, because you will see the campaign is pivoting, because of where we are, and particularly in Wisconsin, and we have seen a tremendous help from Governor Walker, Scott Walker, because God only knows he has battled the left in Wisconsin and has beaten them every single time. So I will tell you that the campaign is now focusing on jobs, security, and freedom. And Ted's going to talk about details, and he's going to try to talk them, because the thing about Ted is there's this saying with the campaign, you don't say it in front of him if you don't want him to repeat it. So the staff is key, the strategists are careful not to talk to him about a particular strategy in a particular segment of the state until they're ready for him to go there, because he can remember everything that has been said to him and how they said it. So, in different parts of the state, in any state, you will know that there are issues that are more important to that area than others. So does that mean that Ted is simply flying around in the wind blowing? No. It is on, if this area of the state is concerned about subsidies, for example, the ethanol subsidies in Iowa, he stood up to those farmers and he said, I am for all types of energy, but I don't believe that the government should be picking winners and losers. He said, I'm happy to say we're going to end ethanol subsidies, but we're going to do it, we'll phase it out so it doesn't pull the rug out from under you all of a sudden. But we shouldn't be doing that. And he's going to be using constitutional principles to address issues about jobs. People being very aware of filing their income taxes. That's what I have to do this weekend. I have to make myself sit down. So if you see a mushroom cloud appear over the Flint area, that's probably me doing my taxes.
All right, we're going to do 2 more. There were a couple that had to do with other issues for Joanne that are not Cruz or the county commissioner. On the essence of time, I'm going to stick just to the Cruz questions, and then you can ask her those.
For those people that don't get your questions answered, if you will rush the stage.
So there's going to be
first in line.
A couple that didn't have to do with Cruz, which was the subject of today. So
I will be happy to
rush
answer
her.
your question.
The second to last one. How about open primaries? Doesn't that allow an affiliate of one party to vote for a weaker candidate of the opposing party and thereby unfairly influence the elections for their candidates? Is this partly the reason that voter participation is down in Democratic primaries and up in Republican primaries?
Yes and yes.
Further away. Yes.
And you know, there was I don't remember what session it was, possibly the 81st session, I'm thinking, the 80th or the 81st session. We had some bills that, you know, there was a push to close the Texas primaries. And we had Republicans all over the state going, we come from a county where we don't have enough Republicans. If the Democrats don't cross over to vote for us because they like us, we won't win. So, there you go.
And I had said, just one more, so you're going to have to rush Joanne at the stage for that one. Just off the top of your head, how many total votes so far as GOP and Dems? I don't know.
Oh, the popular vote? Yeah, I saw that, but I don't have that number in my head. I'll try to, if you'll save that card out, I'll try to incorporate that into my email blast with the polls.
Okay. And so the last one, I had two questions on this, so I'll combine them and ask them. How do you explain Katrina Pearson's attack on Heidi in support of Trump?
Okay, let me just get to the point. 30 pieces of silver. I said it. And I will tell you that in my lifetime, I have had the number of people that have so disappointed me to the point where I could really just cry my eyes out, and it takes a lot to get me to that point. About 5 people that have disappointed me in my life that badly, and she's on the list. I will tell you that the Katrina that I knew wouldn't have done that. The Katrina I knew would not have surrendered her principles on eminent domain and everything else to get a job with Donald Trump. But I will say this, and if she ever sees this, she'll know it's true. She better hope that he and his sons and daughter hire her to do something outside of Texas, because as far as conservative politics are concerned, she is finished. I am so happy to have been back with you guys today. Thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. I love you guys very, very much. Y'all, please keep praying for our elected officials. Pray for our county. And pray for our country and our state. Please do that. We need to do that always.